Welcome to worship in the Unitarian Universalist Church of Charlotte. If you resolve to be a more active part of what is happening here this year, and I for one hope you did, I have some very good news for you. As of today, your record remains perfect. You have not missed a single service this entire decade. You're off to a roaring start in the roaring 20s. Who is groaning? I don't write them, I just read them. Or write them and read them. Today I'm inviting us to imagine it is possible to alter our perspective, to see, to perceive, to experience things from another perspective. It was my encounter with the carved figure you see on the screen that prompted my thinking about this. This curious double-headed dude is Eshu. I'll say more about him in just a moment. If you're new here, welcome. We're glad you've chosen to join us here today. If you've returned after an extended absence, welcome. We're glad you're back. If this is where you find yourself most Sundays, welcome. We're glad to be together again. After that rousing opening by our choir, we'll join with an exuberant song, but first, turn to someone around you and offer a warm welcome.
Here today in this place and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and the world. May this chalice we light our way.
Our first reading is from a children's book called Listen by Holly McGee, excerpts from that book. Listen to the sound of your feet, the sound of all of us, and the sound of me. Listen with your heart. It is your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your hands. Your heart can hear everything. Look to the shining sun. It is for you and all of us. It is for me. The stars, they are for you and all of us. They are for me. Breathe. Smell the air. My air is yours and all of ours. Your air is mine. Your heart can hold everything, including the world, its darkness and its light. Including your story, including my story, including the story of all of us.
Today's reading is by Tara Brock in True Refuge. Building Bridges is a program that has brought teens from different backgrounds, in this case Palestinian and Israeli, to live together for a week or two and get to know one another. It's an incredible experience based in mindfulness and compassionate listening. In one group, a Palestinian girl shared her story about the Israeli soldiers that barged into her family's house and beat everyone up, and after realizing they were at the wrong place, left without an apology. The group facilitator then asked an Israeli girl to repeat the story in first person, as though it had happened to her, including the feelings, the rage, and the terror that she might have felt. After listening to the Israeli tell her story, the Palestinian began to weep. She said, "My enemy heard me."
I've been spending a few minutes each morning with a marvelous Christmas gift I received. Don't worry, no one was cruel enough to give me a Peloton. My gift was a book, a massive tome on the photography of Sally Mann, the initially controversial, now acclaimed artist, whose decades of work was assembled under the title Sally Mann, 1,000 Crossings. In one essay, National Gallery of Art curator Sarah Grenaugh writes of Mann's technique. She has never aspired to documentary exactitude in her pictures, but has always sought to do more than simply record what she sees. While cell phone photographers now post pictures acclaiming them as accurate representations produced without the use of filters, Mann labors under no such conceit. As Grenaugh puts it, she has consistently deconstructed familiar vistas in order to posit new ways of seeing the everyday. New ways of seeing the everyday. That's what's drawn me to Mann's photographs for years. She offers a new way of seeing the everyday. In her celebrated memoir, Hold Still, Sally Mann wonders how anyone could mistake photography for reality. She asserts without equivocation, all perception is selection. All perception is selection. A camera creates a frame, and the resulting photograph is a choice. What is seen, not seen, and how what is seen is actually seen are all selected by the person behind the lens. But that's not just true for photographers, is it? Aren't we all forever choosing what we see, what we hear, what we experience, notice, pay attention to, and what we overlook, avoid, ignore? Isn't that always different for each one of us? It's not just as that ancient philosopher Heraclitus declared, no one steps into the same river twice. Two people standing on the bank of the same river can photograph the same scene, and the result will not be the same photograph. Now, of course, it's not as if we are always making conscious choices about our perceptions. How we experience things is shaped, influenced, altered, let's admit it, biased by many factors. Whether I see a particular pitch as a ball or a strike, whether you think a player committed a foul or not, whether it looks like the receiver caught or dropped the ball, has a great deal to do with which team we're hoping will win. A baby who looks fairly normal to me may look like the most gorgeous creature ever born to you. And that just may have something to do with the fact that the particular infant we're viewing is your grandchild. My beloved philosophy professor Jim Edwards wrestled with seeing in his masterpiece, The Plain Sense of Things. He acknowledges what we see, he does right, what we see to be so is what we have by history and by need been accustomed to see. Many of us who've been through one of our year-long core groups focused on justice here know what he means. We're learning a very different version of history. In fact, very different versions of history and of our current situation than the ones we were given. We're often shocked by the experience, learning new ways of seeing our nation's complex history. We're left wondering how we never noticed these things before. Guided by our vision, our mission, and our board's call to action, we're intentionally selecting a different and often disturbing way of seeing centuries of injustice rooted in a culture of white supremacy. Perception is selection. What we perceive always has a subjective quality to it, and that being the case, today we remind ourselves that we can always try a different perspective. We can choose to see, hear, feel our personal situations, our current stage in life, our family, friends, coworkers, fellow students, our neighbors, from a different perspective. That, in part, is the role of the Yoruba divine messenger and trickster Eshu, depicted in the image that you are seeing today. Eshu is a complex character, and he is quite a character. Not unlike the gods of Greek and Roman religion, with certain similarities to the unpredictable God in Hebrew scripture, Eshu can be petty, self-serving, malicious, highly volatile. When life gets too dull, Eshu will create some conflict just so he can resolve it in some way. When a palm wine vendor and a clay pot vendor argued incessantly about whose product was superior, Eshu disguised himself and settled the dispute, but only by demanding that each make generous sacrifices to Eshu. If you need your religion devoid of imagination, singular in its piety and moral scruples, the wild romps of Eshu just may not be for you. I discovered Eshu in a visit to the High Museum in Atlanta this past summer. He is depicted atop a dance staff with an odd carving. One face looking one way, with a long appendage protruding from the back of its head, ending with another head with a face that's looking in the opposite direction. While the carving got my attention, the accompanying description deepened my intrigue. It read, "In this dance staff made to honor the deity Eshu, two faces look in opposite directions. Eshu, it said, is honored by the Yoruba people of Nigeria. Eshu mediates opposing forces to bring together different worlds. Shrines to Eshu, it continued, are placed wherever there is potential for conflict. Though known as a mischief maker, a gross understatement if you actually read the Eshu tales, Eshu ultimately works to promote order and harmony, balancing opposites while reminding people to look at the world from multiple points of view." I immediately thought of Janus, the two-headed god of Roman religion, whose faces also look in opposite directions. Janus represents the capacity to see both the past and the future, serving appropriately as a namesake for this month. But here was a deity from a whole other culture, taking on a similar form. His two-headedness served a particular function to the devotees of Yoruba Orisha religion. Eshu, it says, teaches wisdom, reminding people to look at the world from more than one point of view. If the photographer Sally Mann is right, if perception really is selection, if this imaginative description of Eshu offers some insight, then we really do have the choice to select consciously a different perspective. I admitted here before that I am not a dog lover. I didn't realize at the time that it was a dangerous admission. As it turns out, many Unitarian Universalists have much stronger feelings about a DOG than they do about GOD. However, I live with two people who see dogs quite differently. After some discussion, last year I conceded that it might be possible for me to change my perception. That's when Apollo came into our lives. A brownish, mid-sized mutt rescued from a nearby shelter. Before long, when I would arrive home, I'd sit on a small step, and Apollo would immediately climb all the way into my lap. As I began scratching him, he would lay his head on my shoulder. Before long, he would snuggle up to my neck, raising his head only to sigh and gently lick my ear. Wait, this is what people see in dogs? Oh, wow! Now I see it too. Regrettably, our pooch, so loving and calm at those times, was not so in most situations. Something a trainer with a bloody bite mark on her arm discovered in our home one day. So when we made the very reluctant decision that ours was not the right home for Apollo, and I escorted him to the car for his departure, Mr. I don't like dogs found himself a bit verklempt. And for those of you who are trying to get your head around this unlikely image, I'll save the story of me buying, playing, and singing along with Christmas music this past season for another service. What is true for personal perspectives, even cranky curmudgeons can change, is true for more consequential matters as well. The physicist Niels Bohr said as much. You can recognize a deep truth by the feature that its opposite is also a deep truth. Staked out in our unyielding opinions, certain that ours is the proper perspective, Eshu intervenes, inviting us to listen with respect and curiosity to another, even opposite assertion. Determined in some relational conflict that it must be our way, Eshu shows up suggesting our beloved just may have a point too. Agitated at someone who puts things in ways we find annoying, Eshu appears with his odd second face to invite us to consider what lies behind what is being said. Captive to that two-headed media monster, Fox, looking with hyper-partisan bias one way, MSNBC looking with hyper-partisan bias the other, Eshu grabs the remote, turns the television off, and invites us to read Brian Stevenson or Angela Davis or Naomi Klein, and to ask what those blathering media behemoths are leaving out. Spiritual work brings us often to the shrine of Eshu, where we pay abeyance to the possibility that we can select another perspective. I'm not implying that there are no reliable truths. You must surely know this. I am not implying that there are no reliable truths and that there are thus two viable sides to every single issue. I'm not saying that. Finding some scientist who is employed by an energy company who claims that the evidence is still out on climate change doesn't alter the fact that we humans are imperiling life on this planet in ways that are now catching up with us. But for every such either-or issue that arises in our political, personal, relational lives, Eshu invites us to recognize the dozens for which it is possible for us to change our perspective, to consider someone else's side. And just to be clear, if I understand Eshu's message, the invitation is for us to consider someone else's perspective, not to use this as one more way to insist that someone else could choose to see it my way. Here at the start of a new week, in a new month, of a new year, at the beginning of a new decade, what might it mean for us to aspire to new ways of seeing? To consider ever more deeply the truth of Henry David Thoreau's oft-cited assertion, the question is not what you look at. The question is not what you look at, but what you see. With this carved image in our minds, we might ask, WWES. What would Eshu see?
Welcome. We're happy you're with us today in this room or joining us remotely. We're pleased to have guests with us. Our members would like to greet you personally following the service. So if you're visiting, could you please hold up your hand and keep it up? Members, take note of the guests seated near you. After the service, invite them to join you for coffee and conversation in Freeman Hall. Should it enhance your experience of future services, we offer large print orders of service, personal hearing assistant devices, and we have an elevator available in the vestibule. If you'd like to learn more about us, please fill out a yellow card and place it in our offering basket later in the service. Members with a life event to share can do so on the reverse side of the card. The cards and offering envelopes are on the clipboards at the end of the row. Please begin passing them now. Visitors interested in hearing about how to become a member can talk with our membership coordinator, Kelly Green. Her contact information is in the back of your order. Again, to each of you, welcome. This new year for many is a time of reflection. It's a time of looking forward towards the new while reflecting on our past. Now is the time for resolutions, however big or small, to make one's life better in the upcoming year. For me, in my particular worldview, it's a time to look deep within, to try to see myself openly and honestly. Being honest with yourself is one of the hardest things to do, isn't it? I mean, being really honest, seeing your full self, seeing the higher self while still acknowledging the shadow self. It's easy to see the good or the bad, the light or the dark. The trouble is, looking only one direction or seeing only one side is harmful. If all you see is good in yourself, you can't see how your actions could possibly harm those around you. If all you see is the bad in yourself, you'll forever be miserable. It's essential to see both. See the good so you can celebrate it, and see the shadow side so you can work on it to improve yourself. The two, together, make you whole. Like many of you, I love to read. It gives me the opportunity to mull over my own life. My favorite genres are science fiction and fantasy. I love to look into someone else's imagination and ride through the journeys they create. But the really powerful books, the ones that I love the most, are the ones whose authors so elegantly weave their life philosophies into them. There's usually a moment, just a few sentences on the page that make me stop. I put my book down and I write down a moment of clarity and insight into my own life. This happened to me as I was listening to the Divergent series by Veronica Roth with my kids. Lily and Jasmine are now old enough to where they enjoy the same books. We can enjoy the same books together in our car. In our various journeys from Thanksgiving to now, we have been able to listen to almost all of the Divergent trilogy. It was while listening to the third book of this series, Allegiant, that I was hit with several aha moments in regards to this service. But to set the scene, Divergent is set in a dystopian Chicago society. The society was set up in a way that can be thought of as a wheel held together by spokes. Each spoke contains one of 5 factions that fill a role in society. Each one is named after a virtue that they uphold above all else. The dauntless uphold bravery, and they serve as society's protectors. The abnegation honor selflessness. They serve the city as the government leaders. The candor value honesty and serve as the lawyers and the court system. The erudite value wisdom. They're the teachers, scientists, and doctors. The amity value peace, mainly living as farmers who, on the outskirts of the city, grow the food to be sent into the rest of society. The intention of this structure, to paraphrase from the book, is that by working together, the factions had kept people living in peace for many years. In the factions, they found meaning, purpose, and life. All of these are amazing characteristics that are worthy of being upheld. Don't you agree? At the age of 16, each citizen must choose the faction they wish to belong to. Most choose the faction that they grew up in, but a few go to a different faction, with the understanding that they cannot return to their families. Upon passing a series of tests and initiation tasks, a person can join the faction of their choice. However, if they do not prove their worth as a contributing member of society, They're exiled and labeled as the factionless. There are also the divergent ones, these people who would fit into many, if not all, of the factions. They honor many values, can see through many different lenses, and they are in danger of being killed because they are a threat to the way society operates. Skipping forward to the last book in the series, the reader finds out that this society is really just one of the United States government's experiments. In the past, there was so much killing and destruction that society decided to cut out the genes that had tendencies towards the dark side. They managed to hone in on genes that were predisposed towards cowardice, dishonesty, low intelligence, or murder. As these were all undesirable attributes, these people were genetically corrected. The idea was that it would improve society and instill peace. The result, however, was disastrous. Here's where my aha moment comes in. Veronica Roth writes through one of her characters, take away someone's fear or low intelligence or dishonesty, and you take away their compassion. Take away someone's aggression and you take away their motivation or their ability to assert themselves. Take away their selfishness, and you take away their sense of self-preservation. It's a balance, see? They're all different faces of the same coin, the yin and the yang, the light and the dark. Within ourselves, as in society, many things are at odds with each other, but can't exist without the other. To correct things, they took those people and they put them in factions so they would revere the virtues that they did have and work together to create a perfect society. This perfect model, of course, didn't take human nature into consideration. What was created to ensure balance was turned into a clashing of the factions. Each faction valued their virtue much more than any of the others, so much that society was turned into this or that, us or them. It created a mentality for no in-betweens and no insight into other lifestyles or values. Only the divergent could save them. But how do you save a society that doesn't want to be saved? There's a frustration I feel when I think of the many extremes in our world. There's so much anger that it's overwhelming to me. My anxiety kicks in and I want to withdraw within myself and keep my family close. Wouldn't it be so nice if someone or something was in the middle of the crossroads to tell us how to make everything better? We tend to believe with our whole hearts that we're right and anyone who disagrees with us is wrong. Just like the factions, we believe our values are the most important ones. It keeps us from making connections with others and from within ourselves. I think the solution begins with kindness and friendship with community, such as this place that we share, and with the bravery of love. The connection that we share with each other is the crossroads that we need. It's there, we just have to uncover it. So this year, I hope to be more like the divergent, both within my own self and within our larger community. I don't want to look through one lens. I want to see life from many different points of view, to try to understand even when I may not agree, to reach out my hand and have tough conversations. I hope to be brave and make new connections with those who are unlike myself. When it comes down to it, being correct doesn't really matter so much as being brave enough to work through the hard times with those around us and within ourselves. Everyone has dignity, value, and worth. Thank you.
I add my welcome again. If you are a guest today, we offer a session following the service called Getting to Know Us. It's an opportunity to talk with a longtime member of the congregation downstairs in our conference room. The generosity of our pledging members makes possible so many activities this week. A full slate of children and youth religious education classes begin again today, and a new session of our comprehensive sexuality education classes, Our Whole Lives, begins this week for 8th graders, led by dedicated and trained facilitators from among our own members. Family Night returns this Wednesday. A class on Thursday evening will be focused on this year's theme, what we hold most dear, exploring and integrating our personal and collective spirituality. You can sign up today in Freeman Hall to participate in the class on Thursday evening. Through the generosity of our member Bob Gorman, a scholar and aficionado of film, our movie nights will continue on Friday evening. There are affinity groups meeting today and this week, and there are so many other ways to participate in the life of this congregation. Thank you to those who continue to offer generous financial support, making it possible for us to offer so many different ways to connect. We open our hearts now to those who are in need. Those within our own membership, Harriet Winningham and Ron Macaroni, as Harriet recovers from surgery. Carrie Ann Wolf, who asks for prayers for her mom and her family as her mom faces surgery and a challenging diagnosis. Others here who face needs, challenges, losses, or who care for a loved one in need. We hold with love on this day the family of Charles Jones, passionate warrior for justice in our city, early leader of Syrians, voice for racial justice, someone who admired and appreciated this congregation. I got to know Charles late in his life, and I recognize that our city is impoverished by his recent death. We open our hearts to needs beyond this congregation and city. In that mystical bond that binds each to all, we offer our prayers for the people of Australia. Many of us heard in John Burns' amazing didgeridoo work today, a prayer for those most vulnerable and marginalized, the indigenous of Australia. Our prayers are for our own nation, once again, as so very often before, in a time of escalating tension. Holding all of this in the expanse of our hearts, I invite us to a time of meditation and aspiration. May we be channels of peace. Where there is hatred, may we bring love. Where there is wrong, may we bring forgiveness. Where there is discord, may we bring harmony. Where there is error, may we bring truth. Where there is fear, may we bring faith. Where there is despair, may we bring hope. Where there is sadness, may we bring comfort and joy. May we seek not so much to be comforted as to comfort. Not so much to be understood as to understand. Not so much to be loved as to love. In this, may we discover that it is by letting go that we find. That it is by forgiving that we are forgiven. That it is by giving, sacrificing even, that we are awakened to new life. Amen.
As we reflect upon the dualities in this world and we reach for the connections that will be our crossroads, please remember this place in which we gather. It is our crossroad and our connection to each other and to the community. We must give to help sustain the nourishment we receive. We will now give and receive the offering. Please join me in an affirmation of our faith rising in body and or spirit. We believe that many streams flow into a river, that the way to wisdom lies in an open ear and heart, that goodness may be pursued for the sake of goodness, and not from fear of punishment, that knowing and not knowing are part of the same, and ambiguity is possible.
Eshu's call to consider multiple perspectives is embodied in our religion. With words from the Unitarian Universalist Association found in the opening pages of our gray hymnal, we read, "Grateful for the religious pluralism which enriches and ennobles our faith, we are inspired to deepen our understanding and expand our faith." That's who we aspire to be. Those who appreciate that there are many ways to see, to hear, to think, to feel, to speak, to listen, to change. It is in that light of God, truth, energy, hope, possibility that we march, sing, and dance with joy.